All right, so we're doing the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and now this difficult part of trying to figure out where exactly everybody is. We're on chapter 20, Rules for Householders and Monks. And, what page would this be? I don't know. Let's see if we've got a date. Well, we're 4 pages in from the beginning of the chapter. And the first sentence is, people may observe the Ekadashi in 3 ways. Now, he's been talking on the previous page, he was talking about the longing of the worldly minded for God is momentary, right? So the definition of worldly, what would we say that is? That's somebody who's kind of depending on getting things from the outside to improve the inside. I guess that would be a worldly person. Somebody who believes in that there's something in the world to be gotten, that there's something worthwhile out there, and so their minds are outgoing. They're depending on their senses to suss it out and to find these delectables that are going to fulfill them. And when they think of God, it's just for a brief moment, And this is one of those moments or one of those areas where the mind can really deceive us. Because when we're conscious of God, we're conscious of God, and when we are conscious of God, we're aware that we're conscious of God. But when we're not conscious of God, we're not really aware that we're not conscious of God. And so the reason that I'm making a point of that is because there was a time where I thought, this was way back when I was just before I joined the monastery, where I thought about God all the time. I had this impression that I thought about God quite a bit. And so I did a practice where, like, every hour on the hour, from 9 to 5 during the day, I would do a quick 2-line prayer. And I had the rules. I've shared this before, but I had the rule that one knee had to be touching the ground, and I would say a 2-line prayer, and then I could get back up and do whatever I was doing. But I would do that every hour on the hour. And when I did that, first of all, it brought my mind back, because every hour on the hour I thought of God. But what it made me really aware of was that I didn't think about God much at all during the day. That when I was actually marking it out 1 hour every hour, the thoughts of God were quite far between. Whereas when I wasn't doing any kind of practice like that, I had this self-impression that my mind was always thinking about God. And so it's good to watch ourselves, to do something like that, to kind of see if your idea of your inner world and the real condition of your inner world are the same. Because the mind's always deluding us. That's just part of it. It's hand in hand with Maya, and it's just carrying on, really trying to take care of the ego most of the time. So this longing of the worldly minded for God is momentary, like a drop of water on a red hot frying pan. The water hisses and dries up in an instant. The attention of the worldly minded is directed to the enjoyment of worldly pleasure. Therefore, they do not feel yearning or restlessness for God, right? As long as they're happy and comfortable, and I've been that way also most of my life. If things are going fine, I don't think about God all that much. Things are managed. When things are difficult, then my mind's on God quite a bit. And so now he's going to kind of talk about this condition of where exactly are we and how are we practicing? What are we doing? He says people may observe the Ekadashi in three ways. That's the night of the new moon every month that people usually in India, there's something, the Ekadashi is when they fast for that day and think of the divine. And I think the real practice is to fast, during that day, a real fast. But he says that people may observe the Ekadashi in 3 ways. First is the waterless Ekadashi. They're not permitted to drink even a drop of water. Likewise, an all-renouncing religious mendicant completely gives up all forms of enjoyment. So this is the ideal, where they don't even drink water. They just completely fast for the entire day and spend that time in the shrine thinking of the divine. But he says then there's the second kind here. The second, while observing the Ekadashi day, they take milk and sandesh, right? Likewise, the householder devotee keeps in his house simple objects of enjoyment. So it's a little bit of a compromise. It might be that they have a difficult, very demanding job, and they can't really fast, or feel like they can't really fast the whole day and be responsible. So they allow themselves to have some sandesh, and some milk, and maybe some light entertainment around the house, but nothing too indulgent, just enough resistance to keep them aware of the presence, to keep them thinking of God. And then the third way, while observing the Ekadashi, they eat luchi and chaka. They eat their fill. They keep a couple of loaves soaking in milk, which they will eat later on. So they're not fasting at all, except that they're not having any rice. Right? And in India, if you haven't had rice, you haven't eaten. And so this plays on that idea a little bit, but there's almost no renunciation. They're not eating rice, it's true, but they're eating lots of other stuff, luchis and chaka, and they're eating their fill, and they're keeping a store of some extra bread, soaking in milk to eat later on. And so this kind of talks about the three ways that we can really approach the divine. Christianity seems to make a pretty big deal in the New Testament about being hot. Don't be cold, don't be lukewarm for God. Be in there. Let's go do this. And it looks like he's drawing up these three options. You can be that serious about your spiritual life. I fast my Ekadashi day. I don't even drink water. I'm really doing this. My heart is in it. My goal is in it. My mind is in it. We're going to do this. And then there's the little bit easier way. It's like, well, I take the middle path, nothing too extreme. I let myself have a few of my enjoyments, keep the mind from becoming too uncomfortable or rebelling too much. And then there's the third where, you're just kind of, taking it easy, really, not worrying about your practice, not worrying about, your effort, and just kind of carrying on with life and being just who you are by default, and not making a whole lot of push or focus to go in the direction toward God. And he goes on to say, he says, a person practices spiritual discipline, but his mind is on woman and gold, lust and greed. It is turned toward enjoyment. Therefore, in his case, the spiritual discipline does not produce the right result. Right? And so if in our life, we're not producing a result in our spiritual practice, if we're not feeling that inner bliss at all, we're not really improving in our self-control. We're not really improving in our love of others and our zest for service and our peace of mind. If those things aren't developing, then it's a good thing to look at how you're practicing. Because if you're practicing, you're going to get these results. If you do your sadhana, the mind's going to be purified. But that isn't true if you're filling up the mind with impure things at the same time that you're doing spiritual practice. So you're doing your meditations and your spiritual practices and stuff, but you're still, going out and enjoying the world and kind of getting caught up in entertainments and social activities and friends, circles of friends, and not really disciplining your life, not really bringing it into more of a quiet space of contemplation and service. And that's going to hinder the fruits of the spirit, the joy that you get from your practice. It's going to hinder the bliss that you get from your practice. It's going to hinder your freedom in your practice. It's not going to get easy. It's not going to get easy for you. The sail's never quite going to be set. And so you don't have that time where you can really kick back in grace and just, whew, all right, here we go, right? And so these are Thakur's kind of sharing with these things with us to give us an idea about the attitude with which we should do our practice, and how if we really want to enjoy spiritual life, do it with an undivided heart. That is how spiritual life is enjoyed. Spiritual life with a divided heart is very difficult. It's very painful. There's lots of dis-ease or unease in the mind. You can't really enjoy God because you feel this tendency to hide from him, in the same way Adam and Eve did in the garden when they went and ate that forbidden fruit. When our mind really isn't clear, when our conscience really isn't clear, it's very hard to draw near to the beloved, because all those things stick up in our head, our guilt and our remorse and our shame, and all of those things start playing a job, because we know how we're doing inside, right? We know when we're doing our best and when we're not. And so he's addressing that here. Hazra used to practice much japa and austerity here, but in the country he has a wife and children and land. Therefore, along with his spiritual discipline, he carried on the business of a broker. Such people cannot be true to their word. One moment they say they will give up fish, but the next moment they break their vow, right? So they haven't trained themselves in that integrity, that inner alignment we talk about, that what you say, what you think, and what you do should always be in alignment. There should be an integrity there. There should be a sincerity. And so when that's not there, they don't have that strength inside. And what happens when we get in that state is our words don't have any power, our effect on others. We try to encourage someone, but it kind of falls flat. We try and lift someone up, and it kind of falls flat. We try and make changes in our life, but it kind of falls flat, right? Because of these things, we haven't gotten that integrity going. We haven't really held ourselves to our inner commitments, right? So he says here that people, when we do that, if we keep our worldly life in full bloom and we try and do our spiritual life at the same time, it has an effect on us. And there is a way of doing it. Just, keep God in the mind all the time and do whatever you need to do. But here he's allowing himself to be distracted and allowing himself to have a whole other, like, two lives happening at one time, right? Is there anything that a man will not do for money? He will even compel a Brahmin or a holy man to carry a load. In my room, sweets would turn bad, and still I could not give them away to the worldly minded. I could accept dirty water from others, but not even touch the jar of a worldly person. At the sight of rich people, Hazra would call them to him. He would give them long lectures. He would say to them, "You see, Rakal and other youngsters, they do not practice any spiritual discipline. They simply wander about merrily." So this is another problem, and I know this one as a Swami. It's like when someone is rich or wealthy, they get more attention. As people draw near to them, care more about their opinions. Why? Because there's all those weird motives in there. What will you not do for money? Even as a Swami, you have to be careful. The devotees, hanging out and trying to please the devotees that have a deep purse or are more generous with you or have given you more money in the past. They get more of your attention. And that's why this the really great practice, the Buddhist practice of non-acceptance of gifts is a great thing. And even for myself, when I was in San Francisco Center, in that Vedanta center there, Swami wouldn't allow us to accept anything from the devotees. If the devotees wanted to give anything to any of us monks, we had to send them to Swami, and they would donate it to Swami, and then Swami may or may not pass it on to us. I learned all of that because somebody wanted to give me a pair of socks. And I had just been told that morning that we couldn't accept any of these gifts. So I told her, I said, "Oh, go to Swami and give them to him, and he'll give them to me." So she went and gave them to Swami, but I never saw those socks. Yeah, so you should be careful about who you indebt yourself to in that way, because it will affect your mind. It will. And it's not helpful for spiritual life. And so Ramakrishna is here. He's talking about, I had sweets in my room that I would give to the devotees, as we always do in the temples, right? But he was saying that in this mood that he was in, that if the person was worldly, He couldn't accept anything from that person, just couldn't even accept anything. And he said, from somebody who's just a normal devotee who's really in sync with their spiritual life, they could bring him dirty water and he could accept it with no problem. But if there was worldliness in them, if their mind was divided, if their heart was divided, he found it very difficult to accept their offering, and conversely, very difficult to offer them something. Right. And a lot of that reason is because when a person's in that condition, the ego's in charge, right? The ego's in charge, and they start collecting ego points because the Swami accepted their gift, or the Swami took their offering, or they were given something by the Swami, and the Swami gave me prasad, he gave me extra prasad, and it's what it's doing is it's increasing their egoism. They're taking something that was spiritual, something that was beautiful and helpful to them, and turning it into something that's harmful to them, building their ego. And so Ramakrishna would not be able to give those things to them, knowing that the fruit of them accepting those things would be egoism, that it would be harming them, for him to accept their gift or for him to give them a gift, because they would not be able to process it properly. So this is a careful thing to consider, to keep your mind unified, keep your life unified. Your spiritual life, regardless of whether you're a monk or a householder, doesn't matter. Spiritual life is the one most important thing for us. It's the one thing that will carry us through. We don't like to think about death. People think it's morbid to think about death, and yet it's the one sure thing. And I use that tool quite a bit in my spiritual practice in my life. I often think about the days where I'll be toward the end of my life, and I sit there quite often. One of the practices I do is when I lay in bed sometimes, I try and imagine that this is my deathbed, that I'm not going to get up from this. And I lay there and I just kind of go through and just check everything inside. I'm like, okay, so you're not able to get up. You're going to be here until you die. Can you be okay with that? In your mind, do you have a beautiful place? Have you created a shrine in the heart that you can sit in and enjoy the bliss of the divine? Because that's all you have at that time, at that moment of death. It's you and your practice. That's all you've got. And if your practice has been lukewarm and your mantra has been lukewarm and your mind has always just been crazy and you've never really done anything about it, then you're going to be stuck lying in bed with a hungry, restless mind. Right? So I regularly do this weird thing of laying in bed and just imagining my deathbed and finding the place inside that I'm going to sit and enjoy my life when that time comes. And I want to make sure that I have spent my time with the beloved in my shrine room of the heart, so that I can be at a party laying on my deathbed in some old folks home somewhere, maybe, or just some basement apartment somewhere, who knows. But to find that place inside so that the external conditions will be fine no matter what they bring, right? I saw that with Swami Asitananda, God bless him. I mention him all the time now for this very interesting fact, that in his last days, he couldn't get out of his easy chair. He sat in his easy chair 24/7. During the night, it would go back and he'd sleep in it. During the day, the back would come up and he would sit there, but he couldn't get up because he had a broken hip for a while, and then he had a weird thing going on in his heel that he couldn't get up. But every time I would go check on him, I would go look and peek in through the door or in through one of the windows to see how he was doing. He always had the sweetest smile, and those eyes just kind of half focused, looking at something up in that direction, and just such a sweet, blissful face on him. I knew he was all right. I didn't have to worry about him. He was perfectly.
Swamiji?
Yeah.
Sheshananda?
No, Asitananda.
Where is he?
He was one of the monks at the Olima retreat in San Francisco. Out there, there was Vimukta Chaitanya, Asitananda, and Vedananda when I was there. And then before I came, there were a whole bunch more out there.
This is in the forest, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Swamiji, yeah. So, what were you saying about the ego with the gifts? What is the connection?
If a person has a split mind, that they're half in the world and half doing spiritual life, then what's often the case with someone like that is that their ego is still very much in charge of their life. And so I was talking here, Ramakrishna was saying that he found it difficult to share prasad with a worldly person, or to accept a gift from a worldly person. And I wanted to be sure that we understood the whys of that, so that we just don't think that Ramakrishna, is all judgy and treats different people based on different things. It's not about that. It's that if you are in a state of egoism, when a holy man gives you prasad or gives you something, your ego will take charge of that, and you'll see it as a compliment, or your ego will increase in size, right? Your ego will take that positive thing and say, oh, I deserve this. Oh, look, he likes me. I've got a special relationship with the Swami, or if he accepts your offering, the egotistical person will think, oh, the Swami has accepted my offering. I'm something, along those lines. And so the reason that Thakur is hesitant to give or take from a worldly minded person is that it's actually harming the worldly minded person to accept their gift or to give them one, because it increases their egoism, which is the veil of Maya. So it prevents them from seeing God, right? So it's actually better that he not give them anything.
But Swamiji, in today's world, the householders are supposed to give, right?
Yes. Well, yes, always. We're all supposed to give freely to one another, whatever gifts we have. And if the householder in particular is responsible for upholding society, upholding the monasteries and temples, and upholding their families and welfare. So yes, that's the path of the householder. It's a big one. It's a big responsibility. It really is. It's a challenging path to take, the householder path, because you've got, the time in your shrine is great for the mind, but then immediately you go and you have to be exposed to the world all day, to money and earning and prices and expenses, and it pulls the mind out of the heart, right? It's very difficult. So for a householder, the practice time is more important than ever, right? Because you have to keep bringing the mind back, and you have to try and get a little bit of a storehouse in there to carry you through at least lunch, and you can sit and hide somewhere in a janitor closet and do some more japam later on, and then come out and survive another 3 or 4 hours before you hide in the break room, doing some more japam to fill the storehouse. So like that, All right. And then he's talking about Hazra, how Hazra was falling into that error of paying more. Whenever he'd see a rich man come to see Thakur, he'd run over and start lecturing to him and paying him lots of attention. Why? So that he'd get some money from him, some big show from him, a little gift from him. And that's a dangerous thing for a monk, especially for a monk. I remember we got a big scolding one time in India. The sannyasins, the new sannyasins, when I went to take sannyas in sannyas camp, one of the lectures from the very senior swamis to us was being careful about this, because in India they have these things called bandharas. Whenever there's someone dies, or I guess a rich man can put on a big feast for all of a bunch of monks or something, and they all come, and you're treated like royalty as a monk. I mean, it's amazing. They give you an amazing amount of food, and they've always got lots of gifts for you. They give you, and there were, some monks who were making sure to attend all of the bandharas, even if they didn't know the people involved, because they were collecting the money. And they were telling us a story of a particular monk that had gone to all of these things, and he started having an attitude toward the senior monks. He wasn't doing what he was asked to do, and he was kind of getting short in his words sometimes with some of the seniors. And so the senior monks got together and were like, what's going on? This is very out of character for him. Why is he becoming like this? And when they went and talked to him about it, they found out that he had like 6 digits in a bank account from money that he had been saving up from all of these offerings from these bandaras that he'd been going to all the time. And so the pride of money had moved in and started to affect his mind. And thank goodness, with the brothers being there and noticing that and suspecting something like that, they went and talked to him about it, found out about it, and he got rid of it and got back on track again. But it was taught to us as a warning, saying, be careful, especially as a monk, not to become money oriented, not to think about those things, not to be concerned about them, and certainly don't go chasing after them from the devotees. So it's a very important piece of information that he's sharing here. A man may live in a mountain cave. He may smear his body with ashes and observe fasts and practice austere discipline. But if his mind dwells on worldly objects, on woman and gold, I say shame on him. But I say that a man is blessed indeed, who eats, drinks, and roams about, but who keeps his mind free of lust and greed. Right? So that is what's important. It's not the doings. It's not the external things. It's not the going to temples and being seen, in the front row and making your offerings and bringing your extra special sandesh for, Durga Puja. This is not where spiritual life happens. Spiritual life happens on the purification of the mind, right? The work of your inner shrine is where it's going to matter. All the things that we do externally are toward that alone. To get an inner world that's full of peace, an inner world that's full of the presence of God, that divine bliss of that love, which is palpable and experienceable for you. It's not something for just the super spiritual or for people who have been practicing for a long time or whatnot. This is as life should be. So that's why Thakur says, how sorry he was that even as he sat there doing his practice, that there should be robbery in his house. That's what he's saying. He's saying, if you let your mind wander, if you think about worldly things, if you think about enjoyments, you're robbing yourself. And what are you robbing yourself of? You may not even know that you've robbed yourself because you may never have experienced that inner hum of divine love. And that's intended for you. That's intended, that the beloved wants that for you. He wants you to feel that beautiful love that he has for you at every moment. And that should kick in as soon as you think of his presence with you. That he wants that enjoyment of life in you, but for the right reasons, to enjoy being as Satchitananda, to enjoy manifesting love, to enjoy manifesting wisdom with one another. Right? So he's saying, even if you do all these religious things, if the mind and heart are not there, shame on you. You're wasting your time. Not necessarily wasting, because everything comes together for good. But there's still that insincerity. You're doing a lot of work and you're not getting any of the benefit from it. So really throw your heart into it and watch your heart. When you sit down to do your meditation, don't just immediately start. Sit there and address Mother for a moment. Sit there and be in her presence for a moment, and tell your mind, oh mind, we're in the presence of the beloved Mother. You should focus on her right now. You should be very sincere about your effort right now, right? And we become very sincere, and then we realize we fell asleep. And so then we wake up and we just bring it right back again. Oh, Mother, I fell asleep. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I don't want to do that. Please help me be stronger. But keeping that sincerity and that earnestness at the center of your practice, your spiritual practice is it's your date with the beloved. Probably something only someone born in the West would say, but your spiritual practice is a date with God. It's a very special time with the beloved. And so when you sit for that time, make it very special for you as well. Enjoy God, enjoy your time, and sit there. And before you even start the practicing part, be in the presence and enjoy the presence. Tell a joke, tell a story to the mother. Imagine her laughing, imagine her joking with you, imagine her, touching your chin and giving you a little chin wobble.
I think of bhakti as a courtship.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's not like a courtship. It absolutely is courtship. It's why I talk about God as the bridegroom, and the betrothal, that you've given yourself to God. The marriage is inevitable. The union is inevitable. And so during that betrothal, you enjoy each other's company, right? You're looking forward to that day of union. And so this is how we practice. There is, pointing to Mani Malik, there is no picture of a holy man at his house. Divine feeling is awakened through such pictures. So just a one-line hint right there. A good way to help you keep your mind on God is to be like Gita here, who in the background behind her head has Thakur Ma and Swamiji right there on the wall under her counter, under her cabinet. And now everybody suddenly goes into icon mode. As I look around, where are your holy pictures? Where are they, everyone? But just to your own personal spaces, put things in your space that are helpful to putting your mind on love, putting your mind on God, on the beloved, And so fill your house with pictures. That doesn't have to be just holy people. It can be holy situations. It can be things that make you think of God, anything that takes your mind toward that unity. Hang them around your house, write little poems and put them on your walls, put little bells on your refrigerator door that when they ring, you think of God, whatever, all these little tricks. Manilal, yes, there is. In one room, there's a picture of a pious Christian woman engaged in prayer. There's another picture in which a man holds the hill of faith, and below is an ocean of immeasurable depth. If he gives up his hold on faith, he will drop into the bottomless water. There is still a third picture. Several virgins are keeping vigil, feeding their lamps with oil in expectation of the bridegroom. A sleeping virgin is by their side. She will not behold the bridegroom when he arrives. God is described here as the bridegroom. Yeah, he's talking about that story of the 7 virgins in the New Testament, right? They're all waiting for the bridegroom to arrive. But he's late, and some of the half of the virgins, half of the women, let's just call them women, half of the women didn't bring any extra oil for their lamp. And so the bridegroom was late, or he didn't come when they were expecting him. And so they had to run and go to the market real quick and buy some more oil. And it turns out that while they were off buying more oil, the bridegroom showed up, and only those people who had properly prepared were left with him and went to the party, went to the wedding together, right? And so again, this is Thakur saying, be fully engaged in your practice, be fully there. Bring everything necessary. It's one of the things I learned. Every brahmachari learns, especially brahmacharis brought up in the States, is really taught to be very, very mindful. We used to take these visiting swamis out to Shanti Ashrama, and we would take I laugh at this because it's one of those things that used to drive me absolutely nuts, because we would always take a meal out there. We'd go out there and have lunch at Shanti Ashrama. Well, Shanti Ashrama, there's nothing there. There's no power, there's no water, there's nothing there. And so if you're going to go out there and have lunch, you've got to bring everything with you. And if you're in an Indian monastery, that means you're not going to go out there and have tuna sandwiches. That means you're going to have to go out there. You're going to have to take the propane stove. You're going to have to take the propane. You're going to have to take the spatula and the spoons and the forks and the knives and the plates and the glasses. You're going to have to bring the water because there's no water out there. You're going to have to bring all of the raw foods, the lentils and the tomatoes and the spices and all of those things. You have to bring them all out there, and then you have to prepare this big dinner, rice, dal, and vegetables for the swamis.
Where is the Shanti Ashram, Swamiji?
Shanti Ashrama is about 2 hours east of San Francisco in the San Antonio Valley. And it's the property that Miss Buch from Southern California gave to Swami Vivekananda that her family had been given by the government. And she gave it to Vivekananda to start an ashram. And it's only open once a year. They go up there for a pilgrimage on the last Saturday of April. That's the only time you can go see it. But several of the direct disciples stayed there, did practice there, and the temple there, the little cabin, it just hums with spiritual energy. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to go. But but I'm talking about mindfulness here. He's talking about the virgins with the oil and making sure you have enough. When I, as a brahmachari, had to be packing that stuff up for that swami, when you get to Shanti Ashrama, you're 2 hours from anything. You can't run to the grocery store. You can't run. There's no neighbor. There's nothing for miles and miles and miles. And so, I had to have everything. And so I really had to be on it in my mind, right? Because if I forgot something, we couldn't have lunch. And that's not a small deal for a brahmachari. The brahmachari forgets something and can't make lunch for the senior swamis. That's big trouble in brahmachari world, anyway. And
you had to know the recipe also.
Oh yeah.
So you had to know what ingredients.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, you certainly, that wasn't the hard part because you cooked all the time anyway. I had to cook all the meals there for a number of years, and Greg did it before I did. All right, so this is the attitude with which we do our practice. We're very focused on our practice. We're meticulous on our practice. We make sure that we're fully mentally present for our practice. We don't tolerate thoughts of enjoyment and wandering minds. And when we do see it, we bring that mind back and we give it a little bit of teaching. Say, mind, no. We are in the presence of the beloved right now. None of that, right? Keep it focused. Keep it there. All right. So the master said there were no pictures in Mani's house. And now Mani just said, no, I've got at least 3 of them. And so the master, after he described all this, the master smiles at him and says, well, that's very nice. He's glad. I'm glad you have those holy pictures there. Right. And then he says to everyone, and then Manilal says, I have other pictures too. One is of the tree of faith and another of sin and virtue. The master to Bhavanath, those are good pictures. Go to his house and see them. Right? So now Master is sending people over to Mani Malik's house to see the holy pictures that he's got hanging on his wall. And this is the way a lot of teaching was done. In old cathedrals, that's why the stained glass windows. Back in the Middle Ages, when those cathedrals were built, most people were illiterate. They couldn't read. And so the stories are in those pictures, so that as you walked around the church, you could have your Leela dhyana, your meditation on the life of the saints, of these Bible stories that are depicted in those pictures. So that's why they were there. And why all of the paintings of all of the holy saints are all over the church, for these same reasons. You go there and your mind is placed on God. You go there and you commune with the beloved. You think about his life. You're touched by his life. You remember the love of the Divine Mother. The master remained silent for a few minutes. Now and then, I reflect on these ideas, and I find that I do not like them. In the beginning of spiritual life, a man should think about sin and how to get rid of it. But when, through the grace of God, devotion and ecstatic love are awakened in his heart, Then he altogether forgets virtue and sin, right? It no longer becomes about that. And this is where we're all trying to get. Where religious life, spiritual life stops being about the doings and the rituals and the have tos and all of that. And we start moving into a heart space where we're just naturally walking with the divine all the time. Right. And things become fun. You become a little less serious, about how the shrine is set up, because it's not set up for a stranger anymore. It's set up for your best buddy. Right. And so you've got your things in there and you've arranged them in love and you're not too worried about it. You forget to put an extra piece of incense there and you're doing the puja and realize, oh my gosh, I don't have an incense. When you're a young brahmachari, you feel terrible. You're all shaky, like, oh my God, I forgot the incense. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, this is terrible. You have to go get the incense, right? But later on in your practice, you're kind of drawn closer to God, has become more than that to you. And so now you kind of look at God and you're like, I did it again. look at what you get when you called me. Constantly forgetting incense, constantly forgetting these little pieces and whatnot. Right? But it's between friends. It's relationship. You know the love that's there. And you know that you should have had that other piece of incense. But you guys have been together so long that forgetfulness is not that big of a deal. Right? And so we grow in that way. You see that described in the life of Ramakrishna with the way that he does the worship at the temple. It becomes fully a manner of relationship for him, to where he's literally climbing on the shrine and climbing up into Kali's arms on the shrine. He's going, it's he's not worshiping like a regular Swami, sitting there kind of just doing this thing there on the floor. He's right up there. He's all over Kali and just love, relationship. It's now sport for him. It's his fun. He enjoys doing that puja. He enjoys spending time with his beloved, and he shares all of the things with his beloved that's going on in his life, and it's constant. It's constant. But when through the grace of God, devotion and ecstatic love are awakened in his heart, then he altogether forgets virtue and sin. Then he leaves the scriptures and their injunctions far behind. Thoughts of repentance and penance, they don't bother him at all. It is like going to your destination along a winding river. This requires great effort and a long time. But when there is a flood all around, then you can go straight to your destination in a short time. Then you find that the land lying underwater, deep as a bamboo pole, right? So he's saying if you're in a boat and you have to get somewhere, then you have to go to the ghat and you have to get on the boat and you have to stay on the river and it might have to wind all the different turns. That's the prep work. Those are the times when you are having, that your relationship with the divine hasn't quite become personal yet. It's still a brahmachari practicing and trying to do things right and trying to show them out with proper respect and to keep the mind in the proper place and all of those things. Right? But when that flood of love comes, when that relationship grows and that love is rising in the heart, you can't see the river anymore. You can just get in the boat and go straight there. You don't even have to go to the ghat. Or to the dock. You don't have to be on the river. you ride that flood, right across straight line to where you need to go. And so this is how that is for us. It's no longer us having to do all of these rules and regulations and rituals and whatnot. That starts to fall away. And Ramakrishna says, the sign that it's all gone, that you can throw it all away, is when the hair on your arm stands up at the mere mention of God's name. Right? When you get that thrill in your body the first time the mantra goes through your mind when you sit for practice, and that wonderful warmth comes into the heart, you feel yourself brought to attention. Sometimes you might get a little bit of a prickly feeling up the back of your head or something, that devotion coming to life, taking charge, and then you're just enjoying God. It's not about what you're doing. It doesn't matter how you do it. It's the doing itself that is beautiful. And it comes by grace, right? You expose yourself to Mother, you just be with Mother. And Mother sees that earnestness, sees that effort on your part, sees your sincerity, and she opens her grace, her coffers of grace to you. And then that love and devotion is revealed. It's always there within you. It's just that with an egoistic mind, we again can't see it and can't experience it. But when by the grace, Mother touches us, opens our eyes to the love that's in us, open our eyes to the divine devotion that's within us, right? Allows us to pull some of our devotion away from worldly things and to direct it what it really was going for. And then love starts to become the point, and love becomes the thing that we enjoy, and love becomes the thing that is inspired and expressed within us. In the beginning of spiritual life, one goes by a roundabout way. One has to suffer a great deal, right? Because it's all new to us. Our mind is all over the place. We've got 1,000 little refuges tucked everywhere around the world that we go visit for all these different times that we have different types of troubles and problems. So in the beginning of spiritual life, one goes by a roundabout way. One has to suffer a great deal. But the path becomes very easy when ecstatic love is awakened in the heart. Why? Because all of the vices and all of the enjoyments of the world pale in comparison to a great meditation. Because the great meditation will stay with you the whole day, maybe longer, right? And it'll stay with you forever, actually, if that one time that we do it right. But it stays and it remains, and it actually heals, and it actually comforts, and it actually moves you forward into being what you long to express, right? You watch yourself become what you've always dreamed yourself to be, right? Because love is now carrying you, not commitment, not hunger, not fear. Just love. Love is driving you to meditate. Love is driving you to the shrine. Love is driving you to sing. And you're just inundated in that love. But the path becomes very easy when ecstatic love is awakened in the heart. It's like going over the paddy field after the harvest is over. You may then walk in any direction. Before the harvest, you had to go along the winding balk. But now you can walk in any direction. There may be stubble in the field, but you will not be hurt by it if you walk with your shoes on. Just so, an aspirant does not suffer if he has discrimination, dispassion, and faith in the Guru's words. So those three things: discernment, discrimination, that means we're always watching inside, always guarding our treasure, right? Not letting worldly thoughts come in and steal the treasure from us. Not letting our love be diminished because of forgetfulness. So we've got that discernment in there, always aware, always watching, always learning, always seeing how the mind is functioning and how it's affecting us, right? Learning of the ways to properly raise the mind up, to rear that toddler of a mind into a great devotee, right? So the aspirant does not suffer if he has this discernment and this dispassion. The dispassion comes automatically. Dispassion is not something you have to do. If you are discerning properly, honestly is the when I say properly, I mean honestly. If you are discerning honestly, dispassion comes of its own accord, because you see and have understood that the nature of vice is temporary, that the nature of vice is hunger, that it doesn't ever fulfill the promise that it makes to you. It never gives you what you're looking for. And so if you stay awake inside and you're constantly discerning and watching these things, you learn these things. And dispassion naturally comes. You're not interested in those vices anymore because you realize that all they've ever done is made you hungry for more. They've ruined your life. They've made you a slave. And they've taken away your peace of mind and your freedom, right? And so dispassion comes. And then faith in the Guru's words, right? Knowing that the guru in directing your practice and directing your worship with your inner shrine is bringing you to your fulfillment, that he's taking you home. And you have faith in that, and you trust them in that. And you see you worship the beloved in them for that. Manilal to the master. Well, what is the rule for concentration? Where should one concentrate? Master. Well, the heart is a splendid place. I love that. He doesn't just say, oh, you should meditate in the heart. Well, the heart's a splendid place, right? Immediately, just first words out of his mind, out of his mouth. Why? Because you know that his heart was a splendid place, right? You know, if you could walk into the heart of Thakur, oh, it would be roomy and it would be so pristine and gorgeously decorated. Love, the signs of love everywhere would be there, you know, waiting for that bridegroom to appear, for his divine mother to come. Right? The heart is a splendid place. That actually would be a great meditation. To meditate on the heart of Thakur, to go and to ask Thakur, give me a tour of your heart, right? As you sit for a meditation, to say, Thakur, give me a tour of what your heart looked like, right? And let him show you around what a mature and beautiful heart looks like. One can meditate there or in the Sahasrara. These are rules for meditation given in the scriptures, but you may meditate wherever you like. Every place is filled with Brahman consciousness. Is there any place where it does not exist? Narayana, in Vali's presence, covered with 2 steps, the heavens, the earth, and the interspaces. Is there then any place left uncovered by God? A dirty place is as holy as the bank of the Ganges. It is said that the whole creation is the Virat, the universal form of God. Marvelous. Look at that wonderful teaching there. So the heart is a splendid place, but you can, if you are aware, let yourself be aware that you in this moment are sitting in the very mind of God, that you are inundated, surrounded by his thoughts. The air that's going in and out of your imagined body is the thoughts of air going in and out in the mind of God, you know, and you sit here being aware. Everything is holy. Everything is the body of God. Everything is presence. This is a dream. It is not a material world. These are not objects. These are all expressions of divine love, you know, in their place. And you can sit in that and you can have a meditation anywhere, on anything, if you frame it in that way. If you sit there with knowledge like that, everything becomes a delight. He says there are 2 kinds of, well, we're going to stop there actually. It's 8 o'clock. So let's stop there for this week.